We're going to go back to the earlier story about the Defence Force, the ADFA Skype affair, and the Minister Stephen Smith's refusal to apologise or retract his criticism of the Defence Force Academy's commander, Commandant Bruce Kafer. The opposition says Stephen Smith should be apologising, and joining us now is the Shadow Defence Minister David Johnston. Thanks for your time. Why should Stephen Smith apologise, given the Kirkham inquiry found that while it was reasonable for Bruce Kafer to allow the disciplinary hearing of this young officer to go ahead, it would have also been reasonable not to do so? Isn't there room there to argue that you could interpret this either way?
I don't think there is any room to argue that a man should be stood aside from his job, have his career threatened for 12 months, then have a report exonerating him sit on the minister's desk for 3 months, and then not release the report, have a press release yesterday that says that Bruce Kafer has done nothing wrong and should be reinstated and has been reinstated, and the Minister, having set this ball in motion, having made the appointment of the independent inquiry, that is Mr Kirkham QC, then not taking Kirkham's advice and saying and sticking by his guns that he thinks Kafer has done something wrong.
Well, they're taking the advice in reinstating him. He's taking up his position again this week. The Minister is simply standing by his view that it was an error of judgment to allow that disciplinary hearing to go ahead.
The Minister is the only person in Defence and probably outside Defence who now believes there was an error of judgment. He doesn't have the facts, nor do I. The inquiry officer has made a finding, a very clear, concise finding, that Kafer should be reinstated.
Well,
the Minister's bound by that.
He is being reinstated, as I say, but on that, can I ask you, do you think it was the right thing to do to allow a disciplinary hearing to go ahead on a separate, unrelated matter involving this young 18-year-old cadet who had just found out she'd been secretly filmed having sex? This had been Skyped into another room. Was it right to put her before a disciplinary hearing on another matter?
Well, the first thing I'd say in answering that question is, do I have all the facts? The answer is clearly no, because the Kirkham report has not been released.
Should it be?
What we've got, well, ultimately, after the ACT Supreme Court matter has been dealt with to a finality, and with a redacted version, I think the public is entitled to see why Mr Kirkham QC arrived at the conclusions he did. Now, I would back him every single time against the Minister. He's the lawyer. The Minister admits his law degree is not one that has seen much practice. Now, the fact is, the umpire has made a decision and reviewed the matter at the Minister's behest. He clothed himself in 6 inquiries at the time, and we all gave him bouquets for that.
Well, should he resign, as Neil James of the Australia Defence Association suggests?
Well, look, I think there's a real problem between the Minister and his department. It's a fractured relationship. You could see in the body language yesterday, and the fact that the Minister refuses to abide by a report that his department has commissioned, and remember, he signed off on Kirkham QC. Now, the fact is, having done so, I think he's bound by the report. The other thing is that I think the Prime Minister needs to clearly state that she has confidence in this Minister, given the way the relationship is heading off in separate directions on this particular matter.
And can I ask you about the other part of all of this that came out yesterday, the report, the DLA Piper report into past allegations of abuse? There are about 775 people who are now apparently have a case that needs to be dealt with. How should that happen? There are various options suggested here: Royal Commission, a national apology, some sort of compensation fund. What do you think?
Well, David, I'm very critical of the fact that, having sat on the Senate inquiry into military justice in 2005, I'm very critical of the fact that we've asked these people to come forward and revisit often emotional and traumatic events at great personal stress without a plan to deal with it. I mean, what should we do? Should we have a Royal Commission? Should we give them an apology? Should we pay them some money?
What do you think?
I'm staggered the Minister hasn't got a plan.
But what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think clearly we're going to have to work through each one. I think compensation and a release and discharge to the department is the only way forward so that the expectations for these people are met. Now, what you've got on that basis is a huge unfunded contingent liability. Now, the Minister set this ball in motion. He now has to live with the consequences. 775, significant, and you can tell by the body language of the Secretary and the CDF yesterday, these are serious allegations of horrendous consequence, criminal and other types of allegations. The Minister set the ball rolling. He doesn't have a plan to deal with it. It's a mess, quite frankly.
All right, Shadow Defence Minister David Johnston, thank you for joining us.